بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Allah Jalla wa Ala, He has honored us and He has blessed us and He has gifted us with this deen. He has gifted us with this guidance to Tawheed, this guidance to Ittiba'u Sunnah, following the Sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah Jalla wa Ala, He has gifted us and He has blessed us in guiding us to the path and the understanding of the Salaf of this Ummah. This is a great and tremendous blessing, that Allah Jalla wa Ala, by His fadl, He's guided us to His deen. And by way of this deen, Allah Jalla wa Ala brought together hearts that were unknown to each other. By way of this Tawheed, by way of this Sunnah, by way of the manhaj of the Salaf of this Ummah, Allah Jalla wa Ala throughout time has brought together hearts that were unknown to each other. Hearts that were perhaps averse to each other, enemies to each other, souls that were enemies to each other. Allah brought those hearts together by way of this deen. And so because of this deen, by way of this deen, the people of this deen, they became brothers for the sake of Allah, loving each other for the sake of Allah, supporting each other, helping each other, aiding each other in obeying Allah Jalla wa Ala. This is a great and mighty blessing of Allah, that Allah guided us to His deen, that Allah Jalla wa Ala, by way of this deen, He brought together hearts that were at the very least unknown to each other. This is a blessing that the Muslim, he has to acknowledge, he has to realize. The Muslim, he has to think about this blessing of al-ukhuwah al-imaniyah, brotherhood that is based upon iman, brotherhood that is based upon tawheed, brotherhood that is based upon sunnah. It's a favor from Allah that the Muslim has to think about, has to reflect about, and cannot be heedless about. As Allah Jalla wa Ala, He has said in His book, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ. Remember the ni'mah of Allah upon you. He's addressing the companions. Remember the favor of Allah upon you, that you used to be enemies to each other, and then Allah brought your hearts together. فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. And so by the favor of Allah, you became brothers. The companions, those that were in Al-Madinah, among them were two tribes, the Aus and the Khazraj. The Aus and the Khazraj, they were two tribes that were enemies to each other. The Aus and the Khazraj were having battles against each other, generation after generation after generation, killing each other, fighting each other over trivial matters. Then Allah Jalla wa Ala, He brought Al-Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam with a da'wah of Tawheed. As a result of that, the Aus and the Khazraj embraced Islam. The Aus and the Khazraj, they became like brothers for the sake of Allah, loving each other for the sake of Allah. Imagine that. You have someone who's walking in front of you. This one, he killed my father. This one, he killed my uncle. That one, I killed his brother. But they are my brothers now, and I love them for the sake of Allah. Why? Because we have one goal that ties us together, and that is تحقيق عبادة الله وحده, establishing the worship of Allah alone, واتباع سنة النبي, and following the sunnah of Rasul alayhi salatu wassalam. So Allah Jalla wa Ala, because this is a great blessing, brotherhood for the sake of Allah, it's a big blessing. And so Allah Jalla wa Ala, He commands them, وَاذْكُرُوا نِعْمَةَ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكُمْ. Remember the ni'mah of Allah upon you. إِذْ كُنْتُمْ أَعْدَاءً فَأَلَّفَ بَيْنَ قُلُوبِكُمْ فَأَصْبَحْتُمْ بِنِعْمَتِهِ إِخْوَانًا. You are enemies one to another, but Allah brought your hearts together, and so you became brothers for the sake of Allah, by the favor of Allah. فَكُنْتُمْ عَلَى شَفَا حُفْرَةٍ مِّنَ النَّارِ فَأَنْقَذَكُمْ مِنْهَا. You were on the brink of the pit of the fire of hell. You were on the edge, the brink of the pit of the fire of hell. There was nothing that was stopping you from being from the people of the fire of hell except death. The only thing between you and the fire of hell was death. فَأَنْقَذَكُمْ مِنْهَا. But then Allah, He saved you from it. كَذَلِكَ يُبَيِّنُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ آيَاتِهِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَهْتَدُونَ. This is how Allah, He makes His ayat clear for you. This is how Allah makes His lessons, His signs, His evidences clear for you, so that you may be guided. So the brotherhood that is based upon the tawheed of Allah, the brotherhood that is based upon following the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, that is a brotherhood that is azim, and its fada'il, its virtues are great. Brotherhood for the sake of Allah is something that is greater and stronger than brotherhood by way of lineage. Your family ties, the brotherhood that you have by way of your bloodline, that is something that is strong. As they say in English, blood is thicker than water. Blood is thicker than water, meaning your family ties, they are strong. And they are something that a Muslim has been commanded to take care of, his family ties. But the brotherhood that occurs based upon Iman, that connection is even stronger. The connection that occurs because you and you, both of you, are united by the goal of i'tisam bi kitabillah, clinging on to the book of Allah, clinging on to the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. Two people that are gathered together and united by clinging on to the book of Allah, clinging on to the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, their bond, their tie, their connection is stronger than any family tie. Your family ties, they may just last until the point of you departing this world. Your brothers that you have, your blood brothers, may only last until you leave this world. But as for brotherhood that is based upon Iman, then that continues in this life into the afterlife. As Allah Jalla wa Ala, He has said in His book, وَنُفِخَ فِي السُّورِ فَلَا أَنْسَابَ بَيْنَهُمْ يَوْمَئِذٍ وَلَا يَتَسَاءَلُونَ. The horn when it shall be blown into, the horn when it shall be blown into on the day of judgment, then there will be no more relationships, no more kinship between the people on that day, no more family ties on that day. And on that day you will not be asking about each other. On the day of judgment, the mother's going to run away from her son. On the day of judgment, the son is going to run away from the father. On the day of judgment, the husband will run away from his wife if he needs to. She will run away from her husband if she needs to. Everybody is going to be for themselves. The only relationship that will continue and be of any value on that day is al-ukhuwah al-imaniyah. Brotherhood that is based upon Iman. Brotherhood that is based upon the Quran. Brotherhood that is based upon the Sunnah of the Messenger alayhi salatu wassalam. Brotherhood for the sake of Allah, its virtues are great. What is it? What is the thing that brings us together, if you think about it? Is it money? Is it the case that we are brought together because of some tijara, some permissible business? No. Are we brought together because of I want to get to know you so I can get connections for a worldly benefit. No. Are we brought together because of family ties? Are we brought together by anything else other than the deen? The only thing that brings us together is the deen. We are different people from different parts. This one might be Punjabi, this one might be Kashmiri, this one might be Sindhi. But their lineages make no difference, play no role. The only thing that brings us together is the deen of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala. This relationship, it is the strongest relationship that the person can have, and it has value. It has value, qadr, in the eyes of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Brotherhood for the sake of Allah, it has great value in the eyes of Allah Jalla wa Az. On the day of judgment, Allah Jalla wa Ala, He shall say, أين المتحابون بجلالي? Where are those who loved each other for my majesty? اليوم أظلهم في ظلي يوم لا ظل إلا ظلي. Today I'm going to shade them in my shade, a day in which there shall be no shade other than my shade. Yawm al-Qiyamah. May Allah Jalla wa Ala protect myself and yourselves and your families from the terrors and the horrors of Yawm al-Qiyamah. From the horrors of Yawm al-Qiyamah is that day will be a day of great heat. It will be a day that will cause people to sweat. Sweat to their ankles, sweat to their knees, sweat to their waists, sweat to their necks. Some of them will be drowned in their sweats, but there'll be a group of people, among those group of people, that will be saved from that heat on the day of judgment, are those that loved each other for no other reason other than the sake of Allah. What brings us together? What brings us together? That perhaps at one time in our life we had the shackles, we had the chains of blind following, of a taqleed al-a'ma, blind following. We did not know Quran, some of us. We did not know Sunnah. We did not know the manhaj of the Salaf of this ummah at one time in our lives. And then Allah Jalla wa Ala, by His fadl, by His virtue, He stripped away those shackles of taqleed al-a'ma. He stripped away those chains of blind following. And so we embraced the book of Allah. We embraced the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah. We read the book of Allah, and the book of Allah said that the prophets and the messengers, they were sent for the noble purpose of inviting people to the tawheed of Allah, to the worship of none but Allah Jalla wa Ala. Perhaps at one time in our life, due to ignorance, we thought prophets were sent to clash with the tyrants, to clash with the leaders, and to strip them from rulership and to establish Islamic governancy. Perhaps due to our ignorance, we thought that. Then Allah Jalla wa Ala guided us to knowledge, guided us to Quran, guided us to Sunnah, and we realized that the prophets had nothing to do with that. But the prophets came to establish the tawheed of Allah, worship of none except Allah Jalla wa Ala. This is what brings us together. This is what unites us. The book of Allah, the sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, upon the understanding of the Salaf of this ummah. This brotherhood, my brothers, may Allah Jalla wa Ala bless you. This brotherhood, its virtues are so azim, so great. Among those narrations, among the ahadith of Al-Mustafa alayhi salatu wasalam, concerning brotherhood, brotherhood that is based upon al-haq, brotherhood that is based upon the sunnah. Among those ahadith that highlight the virtue, the excellence of brotherhood for the sake of Allah and loving each other for the sake of Allah, is that tremendous narration recorded by Imam Ahmad in his Al-Musnad. In a narration from the hadith of Abu Malik al-Ash'ari radiallahu ta'ala anhu, authenticated by Imam al-Albani in Sahih Targhib al-Tarhib. Abu Malik al-Ash'ari radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said that the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Ya ayyuhan nas, isma'u, wa'aqilu, wa'alamu. He said, O people, listen and know and understand. When the Messenger, he says something like this, then it means he's about to say something very, very important. And so you have to pay attention. Inna lillahi azza wa jalla ibad. ليسوا بأنبياء ولا شهداء يغبطهم الأنبياء والشهداء على مجالسهم وقربهم عند الله عز وجل. The Messenger, he said that Allah has a group of slaves, a select group of slaves, like an elite group of slaves. They are not prophets and they are not martyrs. Yet the prophets and the martyrs on the day of judgment, they will have ghibta over this elite group of people. What's ghibta? Meaning they will want what they have without wanting what they have to be taken away from them. A praiseworthy form of jealousy, if we use the term very loosely. They will have ghibta over them, meaning they will want what these people have. They don't want what they have to be taken from them, but they want to have that as well. What do these people have? They will be on elevated stations, and they will be close to Allah Azza wa Jalla on Yawm al-Qiyamah, this elite group of people. So an A'rabi came, a Bedouin Arab came, and he sat down at the edge of the gathering. And he waved with his hand. And he said, Ya Rasulullah, Nasun minan nas, laysu bi anbiya, wala shuhada, yaghbituhum an-nabiyyuna wa shuhada ala majalisihim wa qurbihim inda Allah. This Bedouin Arab, this uneducated Bedouin Arab, sits down at the end of the gathering and he waves his hand at the Messenger alayhi salatu wasalam, and he says, O Messenger of Allah, a group amongst people who are not prophets and they are not martyrs, yet the prophets and the martyrs, they will have ghibta over them on the day of judgment because of their station with Allah, their place with Allah and their seating with Allah. In'athum lana, Hallihim lana, describe them to us. Tell us, who are they? فَسُرَّ وَجْهُ النَّبِي صلى الله عليه وسلم بِسُؤَالِ الْأَعْرَابِ. And so Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam's face, it became happy because of the question of this A'rabi, this question of this Bedouin Arab. Because this Bedouin Arab, unlike many other people, perhaps myself, he wasn't somebody who just listened to knowledge, took knowledge, learnt knowledge, just for the sake of it. No. Knowledge for him was a wasila. Knowledge for him was a vehicle of action. It was a means of action. He wanted to act upon it. So now he knows that there's this elite group of people on the day of judgment that the prophets and the martyrs are going to have ghibta over because of their station and their status with Allah. This A'rabi wants to be from them. So he asks the Prophet, tell me who they are. Describe them to me. So what does the Prophet say? He alayhi salatu wasalam, he said, Hum nas min afna'in nasi wa nawazi'il qaba'il. Lam tasil baynahum arhamun mutaqariba. They are people of various different tribes unknown to each other. There is no family ties that connects them. And then he tells us why these people are going to be so elite on that day. تَحَابُّوا فِي اللَّهِ وَتَصَافُوا. They loved each other for the sake of Allah, and they had clean hearts towards each other. يضع الله لهم يوم القيامة منابر من نور. Allah shall place for this elite group of people on Yawm al-Qiyamah manabir of nur, pulpits of nur, pulpits made out of light. فَيَجْلِسُونَ عَلَيْهَا, and so they shall sit down upon those pulpits. فَيَجْعَلُ وُجُوهَهُمْ نُورًا وَثِيَابَهُمْ نُورًا. Allah shall put nur in their faces. Allah shall put nur, light in their faces, and nur upon their clothes, light upon their clothes. يَفْزَعُ النَّاسِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَلَا يَفْزَعُونَ. People on Yawm al-Qiyamah, they shall be frightened. People on Yawm al-Qiyamah, they shall be alarmed. People on Yawm al-Qiyamah, they shall be terrorized. وَلَا يَفْزَعُونَ. But this group of people, they will not be frightened. They will not be terrorized. They will not be alarmed. وَهُمْ أَوْلِيَاءُ اللَّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. And they are the awliya of Allah. They are the true allies of Allah. No fear shall be upon them, and neither shall they grieve. This narration of our Nabi al-Mustafa alayhi salatu wassalam, it is a sufficient tashji', a sufficient encouragement in us loving each other for the sake of Allah, for us putting in effort in maintaining our brotherhood that is based upon the Book of Allah, based upon the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah, based upon the understanding of the Salaf of this Ummah who were favored by Allah. نكتفي بهذا القدر وصلى اللهم على نبينا محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين.